Welcome to Sikh Cast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Hello, Guru Fateh. Welcome to the Sikh Cast. My name is Manpreet Singh. Thank you for being with us today. With me today, I have a special guest who's been on here many times, Inni Kaur. Thank you for being with us today. How's it going?
It's going well. Guru Fateh, Manpreet. It's good to be back. It's been a while.
It's been a while. Inni Kaur, you are a creative director at the Sikh Research Institute. You're a passionate author, poet, and artist. And you also have a new book coming out next month called The Story of Us, which I'm sure the listeners can't wait to read. But today I want to talk about this powerful article you wrote on the SikhRI website called Take a Knee with a Prayer. And I thought it was really powerful. They have some moving pieces in it. And I really wanted to talk to you about it. So could you please, just for the listeners, share the beginning of this article and then we'll get into it.
Sure. I'm glad you liked it. Racism is alive and well in the United States of America. It has always been. Naive are those who think otherwise. The white man landed in America and the red man became the target. The red man's land was taken, his way of life mocked, and he forgot who he was. To this day, the red man is lost and is relearning as I am. The white man brought the black man to America as a slave. The black man forgot his language, his culture, his essence. The black man fought for his freedom with a heavy price. The black man was granted freedom in 1865. Or was he? Laws don't raise consciousness. Laws don't change hearts and minds. So what does?
Yeah, so powerful, so powerful. What I really like is you say so much in the beginning using the least words possible, and that's very hard to do. So I know this is a different piece for you. So what compelled you to write something like this?
Yes, it is a different piece. It was the hukam of the day, it was the death. And it was the next day, the hukam, and that of course was weighing on everyone, not just me, I think. And the hukam that morning was by Guru Nanak Sahib. And the last line of what I heard was, "Blessed is that scribe who writes about the eternal truth and enshrines that within the heart." And when I came into Sikhi, that was my gift, that you will write. And I felt Guru saying, why aren't you writing about this? And so what I read to you actually flowed at that point in time. And I didn't know what would transpire after that. I wrote that, and then there was a pause of a couple of hours, and then I went back to it. Because I have really felt this deeply. And I come from a tradition, and when I say a tradition is because my journey has been, ins and outs of many faiths. So I always I have a leaning towards, more towards Piri than Miri. And it's been a struggle with me. And it's a struggle I acknowledge, but I am fully aware that this is a struggle within me. So when this came, I said, I'm compelled to say something now. I need to say it. So that's why this piece flowed. My first one was on 84, the Punjabi poem. And then this is the piece in English, which I feel is that, turning point for me.
Yeah, I mean, this piece, if that's just the beginning. And then you share so much on the Sikh tradition. And I think it's been lost, actually. Not a lot of people talk about this. So I'm glad that you wrote about it, because that was another moving element in here about Guru Ka Bagh And what happened there and what the Sikhs did was just so powerful, especially if you're a Sikh. Even if you're a non-Sikh and you read it and you just can't believe what happened. So tell us about that.
So that incident, that story, I saw it. So, it came to my consciousness when I watched the film Gandhi in 1982, Richard Attenborough's Gandhi. So this scene on the screen was so powerful, except, and I did not know it, it was portrayed as Gandhi was doing this. So think about it. Here was Gandhi in that movement doing this. And it was etched in my mind, in my consciousness, that was so powerful. And I attributed that to Gandhi because that's how the film portrayed it. And when I began to read Sikh history and I came across this, and I'm saying, but I know this story, I've seen this story. And I put the two together and I said, oh my gosh, it was incredible how a part of Sikh history can be misconstrued as someone else's history. Yes, it's part of the movement of the British, Quit India movement, but to not have Sikhs represented there was colossal in my mind. So that has stayed with me. And when this came, this piece, it flowed. It's not that I thought about it. It was just that this was something has been with me for so long, as how the Sikhs, the self-restraint they showed to get their piece of land, Gurdwara, back from the Mahant, and how the police conspired with the Mahant and beat them down. In the beginning, it began with 5 and 10 people coming every day to take the wood from that land. And then there was a fine imposed. I think it was a 50 rupee fine. And there was an FRI case against these people who were coming legitimately to the land to grab the wood for the fire, for the Guru Ka Langar. Then the SGPC gets involved. Now, this is a very, very different SGCP from what we know today, right? So it has all the elements. And so they then decide to make a point of sending a delegation every day. And somewhere around, August, I want to say August 22. This is in 1922, right? So the police then begins arresting all these jathas coming in. Now we move forward to August 26th. There are about 100 going in every day, beaten, literally beaten, and the next 100 go, the next 100 go. It was so much, and that's when C.F. Andrews writes, what he wrote. But there's also I want to say there was a film prepared by an American called The Exclusive Picture of India's Martyrdom. And I'm trying to find that because at one point I did see it and then I don't know where to get it, but I'm looking for that clip where he shows the scene, where it's recorded of what actually was taking place. So when this was transmitted to Britain, to England, that's when the uprising of the British rose, that this was barbaric. And then we have the lieutenant general come to the area, stop the beatings, right? So that's the first victory. Then so part of the morcha succeeds. Then the second victory is the release of the prisoners. That's the second, and the third victory is the land gets back. Been given. So it was a process. The Sikhs were very clear what they wanted, and it was a process that was happened. But then here we go. Now it's October. So in October 1923, the SGCP is declared an unlawful organization and banned. So there was, it was organized. It was a protest. There was great self-restraint of these individuals, and I look at that strength. What was their character? What is it that they believed in? They did an ardas first at Darbar Sahib, at Sri Harmandir Sahib. And then they go there knowing very well that they're going to be beaten. So what type of a Sikh was that? That to me is inspiration. And I always, and yes, this was the Akali delegation. I mean, this was the Akali movement. And, Akal is timeless. The first time, I believe, when I was researching, where did this word Akali come from? Where did it, appear in Sikh literature? And from what I can gather, somewhere in the 1690, this came about. And they were sort of like the Nahangs, and they wore this distinct blue outfit, which they wore. But these were people extremely committed, ready, ready to do anything for the Guru, for the Panth. When I say Guru, it's the Guru Khalsa Panth and the Guru Granth Sahib. And then somewhere they lost their way. But in 1920, they got it back. And this is when, the Gurdwara reform movement came about, and they were very, very much part of that. And then once they got their Gurdwaras released, then they started fighting the British, right, to leave India and to gain control, to get that back. And I remember, my mother was an Akali. My Nanaji's side of the family was Akali. My Dadaji's side, my father's side of the family was Congress. So my mother would constantly, this was a battle at home, right? Between the Congress and the Akali. Can you imagine those scenes? And my mother would say, because in fact, my grandfather met his father-in-law in prison. They were both, and my grandfather was from Congress, and his was, but at that time, all the Sikhs were in prison. I mean, it was like a badge of honor. My father carried a passport which was a red passport, which said son of a revolutionary, because my grandfather was exiled from British India. So the history is very much there. Everything is very much there. But my mother would say the Akalis of today are not like the Akalis when she was growing up. I mean, there was a very clear distinction. She said those Akalis were totally committed to the Guru, and they were totally committed to the Sikhi Qaum. That's her word. She said they did everything for that. But today, the Akalis, no. I mean, and that, my mother passed away. It's been 8 years. But that was her gripe. And my father was, a diehard Congress. And he would try to convince her, there was no way she was budging. And that's the spirit I loved about my mother. And, this is a woman, right? The women were so committed as well. I mean, she knew everything about the political scene, what was happening in the Sikh movement. So, yeah, it was really quite powerful. So this particular incident actually has shaped me, because part of my growing up, I grew up Roman Catholic. So the fact that a missionary said, the last line really, that he saw hundreds of Christs being crucified by the Christians was very moving for me, because it made things very real, because that was part of my tradition as well. So there were multiple things in this piece that affected me deeply. And I don't know if the Sikhs know about such incidents that have taken place in our history.
The other thing is, as well, and I'm sure there's some listeners saying, why don't you just fight them? And the thing is, we could have fought them, but the Sikhs didn't. They decided not to fight. They decided to do it this way. And I think that ties in very well as you go on in this piece of, is that how you raise consciousness and change hearts and minds?
Yes, I mean, this incident in the film, In the words of Gandhi, this is the way they said it, that this incident, what took place there, has won us independence already, because it changed hearts and minds in England. And that's when you raise consciousness. You raise consciousness by doing something so incredible that the other person, the other people, have no option but to bow, because it is so powerful. The goodness is so powerful that you actually bow to that will, to that goodness. You don't no longer bow to the individual. It's to that collective, that something so powerful has come in front of them. Now what do we do? And that's what is needed, I feel, right now. And what has happened to George Floyd is terrible. Please don't get me wrong. But this is because we other, it's anti, if we cannot look beyond that we are one people, these things will happen over and over again. And they've happened in this country over and over again. Okay, where, we put the Japanese, we rounded them up and put them in confinement, right? We have problems with, the Jews, we do all this to them. We do this to the Sikhs. We do this now to the Arabs when something happens, because we think they're all other, not recognizing we are one people.
Yeah, the oneness and Inkar is what we talk about all the time, and that is, realizing there is no other.
There is no other. And for me, what brought me to SikhRI was the oneness, and Sabmai Jyot Jyot hai soy, that the light, the Jyot, is the same, is in everyone, is the same. I mean, that is such a wonderful, fundamental principle of SikhRI. That what are we fighting about? Why are we looking at them differently? We are one. And that's the vastness which Guru Sahib, is the Sikhs embrace, to become that vast. But in our own community, have we become that vast to even accept, to rise above caste, to rise above, accepting women in their spaces? So we have a lot of work to, and it all flows from there. I mean, it's easy to say we must do this, this, and this, but I'm of the opinion that unless you don't look within and clean up whatever is inside you, you really can't be there for anyone else, because your prejudices and your way of looking at life will affect everything around you. The way you speak to your children, the way you behave, you don't even have to speak, it's the actions that you do at home. Manpreet, I didn't even know caste existed in Sikhi until I went to my children's Sikh camp. And that's where I learned about caste in Sikhi, because I grew up not knowing it. My parents never talked about it. So I didn't know anything about it. To be oblivious is wonderful. I did not know anything that there was prejudice against the Jews until I came to this country. So what is it? So to grow up in that way of acceptance, how do you change consciousness? How do you accept people? Is when you grow up in that place where you treat everyone alike, where your education system right from the beginning is inclusive. I remember when my daughter was in kindergarten and we went to open house, right? My husband entered the classroom and you could see everyone step back because he was wearing a dastar. And none, where we were the only Sikhs in town. In fact, my children, my daughter was the only, I want to write it, colored child in school. So this happens everywhere, and then you have work cut out for you, and you work at it, and you educate, and you are out there. The burden is on each one of us. This is not just for the politicians to solve. This is just not for the clergy to solve. This is actually for all of us. This is not just that problem. This is our problem. That we are not able to see the one, and therefore our actions and our laws and what we decide reflects our thing. Can we take that burden on ourselves? That's the question. It's so easy to blame this administration and the past administration and the police system. And yes, they all have blame. Believe me, they all do. But at the end of the day, who are they? They are like all of us. So what do we do? How do we move forward so that we don't have another killing like this, a murder like this? Going up in places going up in flames like this? What do we do? What are our options? Yes, we can create a law, we can create laws, and we can do all that, but do laws really change? Does that stop our behavior? The individual okay, this time, all right, so let's say we fixed it for the Black community. What if this happens with the Latin American community? What then? So now we're going to write another set of laws for them. When do we stop and say, no, this is a human condition. This affects each one of us. And until we don't do that, recognize that, this is going to be with us all the time. And this is not just an American thing. I mean, I grew up in the Middle East. The Black Muslims are treated inferior to the color in India. So, to say this is just an American thing would be naive. And I think that would be an injustice. If we're going to address it, let's address it globally. And really say what makes the white color superior to any other color. And who gives them that power? But they've done a great job because, India still wants everyone to be white.
That they definitely want everybody to be white. Trust. Their ads are just hilarious. Their face cream ads are just hilarious. That was very powerful what you said. And you have an offering in here too. And I'm not going to read it all, but I'm basically paraphrasing because the article is called Take a Knee with a Prayer. So where should we take a knee? And saying police stations, city halls. And then you have a prayer here from Guru Arjan Sahib. Yeah. So I don't want you to read it because I want the listeners to go on and read it themselves. It's way more powerful when they read it themselves. And we have it in Gurmukhi and the transcreation. But why this Shabad from Guru Arjan Sahib? Maybe just tell us the gist of it.
So for me, this Shabad was, Guru Sahib is saying that Akal Purakh, the one, the source, will protect the devotee no matter what. And the tyrant, the one who goes against the laws of nature, that everyone is one, will be punished, will be put through the fire. But when I read this, for me, the question was, am I a devotee? That was my first question. To be able to have the protection of the one, the source, I must first be a devotee. So there was, this Shabad made me really pause. We are in also a period of, COVID and lockdown, where we are all within, and I feel very comfortable, and I feel very grateful and blessed. And I sometimes look at it that I feel like I'm in the sanctuary because I feel protected. So when this Shabad came, it was a question. I said, am I a devotee? Because if I'm a devotee, nothing is going to touch me. And therefore, I can go out and do what I need to do. So this was, everyone looks at Shabad or what we call prayer. I don't want to really call Shabad a prayer. I want to call Shabad as a reflection. It's really something that you need to reflect on and see how it applies to you or what you want to take away from it. Prayer is like a mantra you just say out, it doesn't affect you, but this is something which deeply connects you to something more powerful, and it's looking within and saying, yes, I think I can do that, because Guru is telling me the ones who commit such abuse, they will be taken care of. So I'm not worried about them. I just need to do what I need to do. And I'm not worried about my safety either, because if I'm a devotee, I'm protected. So it plays on two ways. I'm this is the way I relate to the Shabad. Everyone has their own relationship with Shabad, and I leave it up to them as to what they get out of it. But yeah, and we've been receiving at SikhRI, we've been receiving a lot of email requests. Please tell us what to say to our interfaith events. Everyone is going to interfaith events because this seems to be that moment where everybody's reaching out and being with each other. So, I did parts of this article I put together for about 3 people to read to their congregations where they were going. And they said that, it was appreciated and it worked, whatever that working meant for them, but they connected with it. So what is it that, what everyone gets out of it? It's their journey.
I implore everybody listening to go ahead and read this article that you put up. It's on the SikhRI website, right on the homepage. It's on all our social media channels. I know we've been talking about this, and I appreciate your time today. Appreciate you being on the podcast, but I definitely want you to leave the listeners with some final thoughts.
There are moments in everyone's life where you get asked, where were you? 84 happened and everyone says, where were you? 9/11 happened and everyone said, where were you? What did you do? I think this is that defining moment of like, where were you and what did you do? So for each one of us to look within us, to say, what is my contribution in this? And it could be something very, very small. It doesn't have to be big. In Guru's army, in Guru's Darbar, everyone is equal. Whether you serve, in the stable, whether you serve making weapons, whether you serve cooking langar, whether you're riding on that horse with Pacha, whether you're defending, whether you are burning the home fires, everyone has a place, a unique place, but they all know they're serving. And they are serving the one, the Ikunkar. So my thing would be to you, in this moment, which is it's a crime that is so unjust that we must say something, we must do something. So what is it that you are doing? Even if it's just a conversation with your children to talk about, this is not how we treat people. This is not how we look at people. We believe in Ikunkar, in oneness, the Jyot in everyone. That itself is a lot. The ones who can march, the ones who have the ability to create the laws and be there on that table, please do that. But recognize not all of us have that skill. So whatever your skill set is, use that to whatever capacity you are comfortable with. And do that.
No, great final thoughts. Definitely do that. Inni Kaur, appreciate your time. Appreciate you writing this powerful piece. I implore everyone once again to go ahead and read it. Inni Kaur, I hope we chat again soon. Thank you for being here. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for having me, Manpreet.
You were listening to Sikh Cast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.